Imagine having to deal with the most complicated bathroom situation in the world while dressed in something that resembles an architectural structure. You're trapped inside layers of fabric that could easily shelter a small family. Your waist is cinched so tightly by a corset that yoga-style breathing is out of the question. And all around you is polite society, which would surely faint if it knew the genius and sometimes shocking methods women used to handle the most basic calls of nature. Today, we're diving into one of history's most astonishing mysteries: how Victorian women managed basic bodily needs while dressed like walking monuments to fashion. And trust me, the solutions they came up with will absolutely blow your mind. But before we enter the world of hidden chamber pots and secret toilet strategies, drop a comment with your city or country. I'm genuinely curious how we're connecting across continents to explore these incredible historical secrets together. And if you love deep dives into the most intriguing corners of the past, hit that subscribe button because there are many more breathtaking stories ahead. Now, let's travel back to an era where going to the bathroom was practically a contact sport, and women became masters of stealth and strategy just to answer nature's call. The daily dressing ritual of a Victorian woman resembled preparation for battle. It began with a thin linen chemise, a base layer protecting expensive outer garments from direct contact with the skin. Then came the corset, laced so tightly that many women's lower ribs became deformed over time. On top of that, multiple petticoats, sometimes 6 or 7 layers, each adding volume and shape. But the true feat of engineering was the crinoline, a cage-like structure made of steel hoops connected by fabric tapes. This device could reach up to 6 feet in diameter, turning simple actions like sitting or walking through a doorway into carefully choreographed operations. Some designs were so massive that furniture had to be custom built to accommodate them. Living inside this mobile architecture meant Victorian women had to completely rethink their approach to hygiene and bathroom needs. The most basic bodily functions became complex choreographed performances, requiring planning, assistance, and a healthy dose of creativity. The chamber pot became the central character in this daily drama. These weren't just containers, they were carefully designed solutions to difficult problems. Women's pots had an oval shape and a curved interior to fit comfortably between layers of fabric and undergarments. Higher-end models came with tightly fitting lids, not just for odor control, but as a signal to household staff about their status. In wealthy homes, these indispensable items were hidden inside elegant furniture. Chairs with secret compartments, decorative cabinets with concealed pots, luxurious wooden dressers disguising their true purpose behind ornate finishes. Servants moved through these grand homes like silent ninjas, checking, emptying, and maintaining hidden toilet systems throughout the day. The process required incredible skill and coordination. A Victorian lady couldn't simply lift her skirt. We're talking about 20 pounds of fabric, steel framework, and intricate lace. Instead, she mastered a technique as complex as ballet and engineering. The key to success lay in the right position. The oval chamber pot was carefully placed beneath the voluminous skirts, and with precise positioning and strategic fabric management, the entire process could be completed without removing a single layer of clothing. At formal events, things became even more complicated. In luxurious ballrooms and elegant mansions, there were special restrooms, essentially Victorian toilet salons, where ladies could tend to personal needs with proper assistance. These spaces were serviced by maids, who operated like true pit crews, helping to spread out the numerous layers of fabric, ensuring correct placement of the pot, and cleaning up afterward. The entire operation had to be carried out with such discretion that no guest would ever suspect the lady had stepped away at all. These women were true masters of maintaining dignity and elegance, even under conditions of extreme logistical complexity. But here's where things get truly fascinating and perhaps a bit shocking. For much of the Victorian era, many women didn't wear what we now consider underwear. The sheer volume of petticoats and crinolines was deemed sufficient for modesty. Layers of fabric provided the necessary coverage, or at least that was the belief. Everything changed when crinolines began causing public incidents. Imagine a lady walking down a busy street and a sudden gust of wind catches her enormous skirt, flipping the entire structure upward like an inside-out umbrella. These awkward episodes became so frequent that society finally decided perhaps a bit more coverage was in order. The solution was revolutionary for its time: split drawers. These weren't solid underpants as we know them, but two separate legs joined only at the waistband with a thoughtfully designed opening in the middle. A brilliant design. It preserved modesty when needed, while allowing women to relieve themselves without removing or adjusting their undergarments. The entire operation had to be carried out with such discretion that no guest would ever suspect the lady had stepped away at all. These women were true masters of maintaining dignity and elegance, even under conditions of extreme logistical complexity. But here's where things get truly fascinating and perhaps a bit shocking. For much of the Victorian era, many women didn't wear what we now consider underwear. The sheer volume of petticoats and crinolines was deemed sufficient for modesty. Layers of fabric provided the necessary coverage, or at least that was the belief. Everything changed when crinolines began causing public incidents. Imagine a lady walking down a busy street and a sudden gust of wind catches her enormous skirt, flipping the entire structure upward like an inside-out umbrella. These awkward episodes became so frequent that society finally decided perhaps a bit more coverage was in order. The solution was revolutionary for its time: split drawers. These weren't solid underpants as we know them, but two separate legs joined only at the waistband with a thoughtfully designed opening in the middle. A brilliant design. It preserved modesty when needed, while allowing women to relieve themselves without removing or adjusting their undergarments. The logistics of Victorian toilet rituals went far beyond mechanics. Take hygiene, for example. Toilet paper as we know it didn't exist until the very end of the Victorian period. Instead, people used whatever was available: old newspapers, catalog pages, corn cobs, leaves, or pieces of soft cloth that could be washed and reused. For wealthy women, the preferred option was soft linen wipes. These were laundered with other household fabrics and offered a far more comfortable experience than the alternatives. But even these wipes required careful maintenance and constant attention from the staff. Now imagine how all this complexity escalated during menstruation. The monthly ordeal added yet another layer of difficulty to an already intricate system. Victorian women managed it using homemade cloth pads and a system called the tea towel belt, essentially a fabric belt that held absorbent materials in place. Materials varied: soft rags, cotton, moss, sheep's wool, anything available and absorbent. Women had to change these homemade pads frequently, up to 12 to 20 times a day during heavy bleeding. And all this happened beneath layers of heavy skirts, often without assistance and always in complete silence. Societal expectations around female modesty were so strict that menstruation wasn't discussed even among women themselves. The care and maintenance of Victorian clothing added yet another dimension to these challenges. Those luxurious dresses with dozens of yards of fabric, intricate embroidery, and delicate materials couldn't be washed frequently. In many households, large-scale laundering was done only twice a year, during events known as the Great Wash Days. Instead, dresses were maintained differently. carefully brushed, aired out, and generously sprinkled with special powders that absorbed odors and skin oils. The underlayers, chemises, combinations, and later split drawers, were washed much more often. These washable elements served as protective barriers for the expensive outer garments and were considered essential for maintaining hygiene beneath dresses that were almost never fully laundered. Victorian ingenuity extended to public toilet solutions as well. The garderobe system, a legacy of the medieval period, involved strategically placed openings in the upper floors of buildings through which waste was dumped directly onto the streets below. The famous cry, "Gardez-vous, watch out water," warned passers-by that something unpleasant was about to be poured from above. The contents of chamber pots weren't always considered mere waste. At certain times, especially during wars, government agents collected urine. It was processed into saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder. In other words, your personal waste could literally become fuel for military campaigns. The social aspects of Victorian toilet culture were no less fascinating. Privacy, as we understand it today, was virtually non-existent. Families regularly used chamber pots in front of one another, and at social events, men would simply step into the garden to relieve themselves among the flower beds. And despite all these complications, Victorian women managed to maintain reputations of grace and refinement. They developed systems, techniques, and social protocols that allowed them to navigate daily difficulties without violating the strict standards of propriety that defined their era. The ingenuity with which they addressed basic physiological needs, while dressed in architectural constructions, speaks to incredible adaptability and resourcefulness. Their solutions were practical, discreet, and effective, even if today they seem shocking or amusing. This glimpse into Victorian toilet culture reveals much: the values of the era, its social structures, and the astonishing lengths people went to in order to preserve outward decorum while facing universal human needs. It's a reminder that throughout history people have found ways to adapt, no matter how complex or impossible the circumstances may have seemed. These women were true pioneers in problem-solving, creating systems and methods that allowed them to function in a world seemingly designed to complicate the simplest human actions. And perhaps the most astonishing part is how these elaborate rituals became normalized, so much so that no one even questioned how absurd they truly were. These rituals were simply accepted as part of daily life. Victorian women developed an almost military precision in managing their wardrobe, schedule, and personal needs. They had to plan their entire day around the logistics of their clothing, calculating how long they could go without access to a toilet, monitoring their fluid intake, and even coordinating with other women to share restrooms and attendants. The psychological resilience required to maintain dignity under such conditions cannot be overstated. Imagine the strength of spirit needed to attend a formal dinner, engage in witty conversation, dance gracefully, and maintain perfect posture, all while enduring the physical discomfort of a tightly laced corset and the constant anxiety that any emergency would require a full logistical operation. Victorian women also created their own secret networks of knowledge and support. Mothers taught daughters the complex techniques of managing multi-layered clothing. Servants became experts in the subtle art of assistance. They knew exactly how to act without drawing attention to what was happening. Friends developed coded language and discrete signals to indicate the need to step away without violating the strict norms of polite conversation. The economic impact of these clothing systems was enormous. The production, maintenance, and storage of all those layers of fabric, accessories, and contraptions required vast resources. Seamstresses, laundresses, furniture makers, powder and perfume manufacturers, entire industries existed solely to support this elaborate system of female presentability.